There really is nothing quite like stealing the idea of one of your colleagues within the music review space on YouTube. To that end, I saw Notes Review's video about their favourite albums from the year 2000 up until 2024, and I was looking at the list and thinking, yeah, okay, cool. I have differing opinions on this though. So I figured what better possible way than to put my own version of the video out there. Now, I have altered the rules a tiny little bit to fit my own personal kind of style and restrictions, as I so often do. To that end, I am imposing one of my favourite little restrictions, that of course being one entry per band. Now, this is possibly going to be a little bit controversial given the fact that we are talking about 25 years worth of music. A lot of bands have produced a lot of great albums, and possibly they do deserve more than one spot on this list. They kind of do, but this is more interesting. I kind of prefer it this way. This made me think really hard about what I was doing, and I kind of had to make some exclusions to ensure I had some inclusions, and you'll have to try and guess what I've had to leave out in order for me to be able to leave things in. But apart from that, I've kind of left myself pretty open what we're going to do with this. I'm obviously sticking within my kind of remit of prog rock, metal, the usual nonsense that I kind of listen to. So let's kick things off with the year 2000. The Shaming of the True by Kevin Gilbert. Incredible record. My God, this one really came out of nowhere for me. I first discovered it actually through the Devin Townsend podcast, I think it was, when he was talking about this particular album, and he played the Suit Fugue, I think it was, the Dance of the A&R Men, the kind of a cappella track that starts off early on. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I checked it out based off the strength of that, and I was blown away. Very much kind of digging from that, you know, The Who's Tommy or Spock's Beard Snow kind of messianic figure, like finds fame and things go weird, and it's just great. It's a really fantastic concept. It's really interesting. It's a great take on that version of that particular kind of story. Musically incredible. One of the best albums of the 2000s, 100%, not just of 2000 itself, but of the 2000s in general. If you've never heard this one, it's an absolute stone cold modern classic. Please go and listen to it. 100% it'll change your life. Right, 2001, it could only be Opeth and Blackwater Park. Yeah, I've had to bench a few other Opeth albums, but we weren't going to miss Blackwater Park. We just weren't. There's no way. There's no way. I've had to sacrifice things like Ghost Reveries and Watershed so that Blackwater Park can feature on the list. And, you know, there's a good reason for that. It's basically the best Opeth album. It just is. They really peaked with this one. They just did everything right. Nothing misses on this. It's got that perfect blend of the incredible heaviness of things like the title track, and then the gentle kind of, I suppose, atmospheric folksy parts of things like Harvest. It's that balancing act which makes Blackwater Park so memorable and so interesting, and why it had to feature on this list. 2002 beckons, and with it comes Dream Theater's 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Now, I did roast this one fairly recently for having some god-awful cover art, and I kind of stand by that. It still looks terrible. But we cannot deny the impact of the music on this. This is one of only 2 double discers in Dream Theater's entire catalogue, and let's be real, nobody likes the Astonishing, so we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist and call this the only double discer in Dream Theater's catalogue. Yeah, let's go with that, sure. Spanning, of course, the first disc with some more traditional cuts, as well as some really weird stuff like Misunderstood, Disappear, and of course the slightly more socio-political commentary of some of the tracks like The Great Debate. If we just had disc 1 of this album, this still would have been top tier Dream Theater, but the fact we then get their single longest track to date, the 42-minute long title track, absolutely cemented this in their history as one of the greatest Dream Theater records ever, and one of the strongest progressive metal records ever. Love it, adore it, still hate the cover art. 2003 was a bit of a slow year for me, I'm not going to lie, so I was kind of scratching my head as to what really fit in this particular category, but I kind of went with Muse's Absolution just because I listened to it so much as a teenager. It kind of built itself into my musical DNA, you know? I've honestly kind of fallen out of love with Muse quite a bit lately, although the new single they've released is kind of promising because it sounds pretty gnarly, I'm not going to lie. But I don't know, they are slipping out of my favour, but I can always come back to Absolution because I know that this is going to rock my balls off from the very opening track to the very finishing one. Great record, really fun time. Matt Bellamy and the crew, maybe you've still got something left in you based off what I heard recently. Please come back, deliver the goods like you did in 2003, and maybe I'll put you back up there with my favourite bands. Right, 2004, we are going with Aeron's The Human Equation. Yeah, okay, it could only really be this. When I've looked at the available options to me, it opened so many doors. It really did. I discovered so many bands through this album just based off the strength of the guest vocalists. It was crazy for me how impactful this album was. And it's not just the fact that it opened doors, it's just a genuinely great album as well. The story is interesting, musically it's fantastic, the performances are just out of this world. 100% one of the most interesting progressive metal concept albums that's ever been made. Cover art's gorgeous. I mean, complete polar opposite to Dream Theater's one. This looks amazing. And yeah, I just love this one. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. It's where I would point anybody to if they weren't certain how to get started with progressive metal. I'd be like, stick this on, check out the bands that all the other vocalists come from, and you've got your doorway right there. 2005, we're going with Shadow Gallery's Room 5. Oh my god, yeah, I've talked about this one a fair little bit on the channel recently. I kind of keep coming back to this one. Again, this is one that I discovered when I was at university. I must have been about, like, what, 20, I think it was, something, early 20s when I found this. And it just ticked all the boxes I was looking for. Discovered them through the previously mentioned album, you know, Mike Baker was featuring on the old Aeron record back there, and it led me to Shadow Gallery. Now, I'm always torn as to if I prefer Room 5 or its predecessor, Tyranny, but today, just based off the nature of the video that I'm doing, I think I do prefer Room 5. I think it's a little bit more consistent throughout. It's got a better flow. The songs are generally speaking a bit better as an overall idea and concept. Story's great, vocals are great, everything's great, 100% one of the best. Absolutely, just check this out. It feels almost like a little hidden gem that anybody who knows about it will absolutely understand why it's on the list and why it topped 2005 for me. 2006, we're going Frost's Million Town. Really, really, really love this one. I suppose this is kind of like marks a point in my modern progressive rock education when I started to realise that not everything needs to be metal. Now, whilst there are elements of metal, I suppose, within Million Town, this is ostensibly just progressive rock, just very modern progressive rock. And it kind of carries a vibe of electronica, of almost like synth pop in a lot of places, and it's such an incredible vibe. There's so many good moments on this album, but the title track that closes it off is just such a winner. I mean, it's that which really cinched this over all the other entries in this potential category for 2006. Like, I just kept coming back to Million Town just because of the strength of the title track, Epic. It's so friggin' good that you just can't ignore this. To have this anywhere else other than the top spot of 2006 for me would have just felt wrong. Yeah, it's 2007, y'all know what's coming. You do. If you know me, you know what's coming. It's Colours. Of course it's Colours. There's always got to be Colours. I mean, Jesus. This is the problem though, right? I have such an issue with like having to only pick one because 2007 was such an incredible friggin' year. I mean, come on. I was torn. I was like, do I go with the obvious pick of Colours? Because I kind of feel like I have to. But I can't not mention Neil Morse's Sola Scriptura whilst I'm evangelizing Colours, because that really would have been my pick had I not been so simping for this particular album. But yeah, Colours, I don't really know how much more I can possibly say about this album on this channel that I haven't already. It's my favourite record of all time. There's no way it was missing out. It just wasn't going to miss. Okay, softening things down for 2008, it's Beardfish with Sleeping in Traffic Part 2. Once again, we have another album that's kind of carried by the epic on it, but the rest of the album is still very, very good. It's got a great, cheeky little sense of humour, you know, there's some genuinely laugh-out-loud funny moments in the lyrics here, as well as this sort of like playful instrumentation that kind of goes on throughout the album. But that epic, it starts so simply and so straightforwardly, but it just builds and builds into so many weird, complex, narratively obtuse moments. Oh, it's so good. It's a great album. It's definitely one of those ones that made me start to appreciate the more Scandinavian modern prog side of things, which kind of opened up a few more avenues to me. But I always keep coming back to this particular Beardfish album. They've got some great other records, sure, but this is their crown jewel. This is the one that I will always tell people, that is top tier Beardfish. It is also top tier for 2008. Right, in 2009, we are going with Carnival and Sound Awake. Once again, talked about this one fairly recently on the channel, and there's a good reason. It's a fantastic record. It carries every little bit that I want from Tool, because I'm not the hugest Tool fan, but I see the potential. I see the reason why people like Tool, but I just don't personally really get it. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. They're fine. They just don't light my fire. Carnival, on the other hand, take everything that I enjoy about Tool, the parts that I like, and they run with it, give it its own flair, its own feeling, its own DNA, and it crafts it into something that I find effortlessly enjoyable. Sound Awake is just one of the albums of all time. We're not just talking about prog rock and metal here. This is something that can stand toe-to-toe any album, any genre, any time of day. This is fantastic. There's a reason people are now getting extremely excited about the fact they are making new music, and we could very well be seeing a new album from them. If that happens, I can't think of many other things that have got a genuine shot at being album of the year. Like a bolt of lightning from the sky in 2010, Haken arrived with Aquarius, and frankly, they changed the landscape of modern progressive metal. These guys were the real deal. Up until this point, basically everybody had been trying to emulate Dream Theater. They were doing everything they could to be just like them. Now, while Haken definitely had a lot of Dream Theater in their DNA in the early days, they also managed to stand aside as a genuine threat to the crown of the king. And for me, they did everything that Dream Theater did, sure, but they did it better. They did it so much better, and you really feel everything that they were bringing to the table on their debut album of Aquarius. I will still personally kind of hold my hands up and say that I feel it's their best album. It's their most honest, it's their rawest, it's their most confident sounding, because they had everything to prove to a world that didn't know what was coming. They absolutely knocked it out of the park, multiple home runs in this one, and I was obsessed with this, okay? When this came out, I could not listen to anything else for like 6 months because it just would not leave me alone. I didn't want to listen to anything else. I'm still obsessed with this. I can still almost recite it verbatim from start to finish. If you want me to do a terrible a cappella version of it, then maybe I'll make a 70+ minute long video sometime. Who knows? No, we'll never do that. That's a terrible idea. Nobody wants to listen to that. That being said, Aquarius is one of the absolute goated albums in the progressive metal space. Even now, 15 years later, it remains the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely incredible. Definitely a worthy winner of 2010. 2011 now rolls around, and because I couldn't really include their first album due to restrictions and what have you, we're going with Fair to Midland and Arrows and Anchors. I love this one. This kind of ups the ante from the whimsical kind of fairy tale vibe of the first record, and it kind of hammers it home a little bit. It's a bit danker, it's a bit darker, it's a bit heavier, and I really, really love it for that. This is like demonic fairy tales come to life, and it's so good. It's so enjoyable. And that final track, The Greener Grass, oh my God. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yes, it's the last thing we hear from the band before they sadly called it quits, but if you're gonna have a swan song, you might as well have one of the best swan songs ever made. 100% please check this record out if you've never heard it before. It's such a trip, it's so enjoyable, and it'll probably steal your heart just the way it stole mine. 2012 with Big Big Train and English Electric Part 1. Yeah, this was when I again started paying attention to things outside of metal once again. These brief moments where I decide, you know what, prog rock's actually better than prog metal, which isn't something I would normally say, but here we go. English Electric Part 1. Neo-prog rises once more. This was my first exposure to the band. I know they had a bit of a back catalogue before this, but this was the one that came to my attention and the one I have remained in love with for as long as I can think now. Part 2 was good. I enjoyed Part 2, but it's Part 1 that really showed to me what modern progressive rock is capable of, how interesting it can sound, how much it doesn't need to ape the masters of the past, and it can be its own thing. And of course that subsequently opened numerous doors to me, and I started looking back through various different other kinds of classical, modern, progressive rock, and I found some really cool bands just from this one album. Nothing really scratched the itch the way English Electric Part 1 did, and still hasn't. I still feel for me this is their best album. I might maybe one day do a Big Big Train ranking, I don't know, haven't decided yet, lots of things on the table. But spoilers, this would definitely be top 3, if not the top spot overall anyway. 2013, and it's Def Heaven's Sunbather. Yeah, again, fairly predictable for me if you know my musical tastes and how much I've talked about this album on the channel in the past. I feel this is the album that made black metal a thing for me. I wasn't really into it before I listened to this album. I found it a little bit sort of, ugh, you know, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was kind of me. Sunbather showed me that beyond the hellish screams and the walls of sound and the endless swirling noise, you could find something genuinely beautiful, something genuinely heartfelt and heartbreaking. And I love this album. I think it is superb. For me, it is worth every single bit of the hype and praise that has been bestowed upon it over the years, and more besides. The only thing that I'm now conflicted about is, do I prefer the new one that came out this year to Sunbather? Time will tell on that one. Right, your boy Devin Townsend was going to be on this list somewhere. I just didn't think it was going to be here originally. Casualties of Cool with their self-titled debut. Allegedly, there's a sequel being in the works, but frankly, I don't think this really warrants or needs a sequel, but I digress. Nothing will ever take away from the monumental impact this had on me. I was not expecting this kind of lo-fi, soft jazz, country space western music that came out of Devon. Having Shea Dorval, of course, doing a lot of the sort of co-lead vocals with him definitely helped, as she is quite frankly one of the most astonishing vocalists alive right now and brought such personality to this recording. But there is something so beautiful, so haunting, so immaculate about this record that I just can't think of anything else that deserves to be on this list from this year. It did, of course, mean that by my own rules, I kind of had to exclude Devin from other parts, but, you know, it was a juggling act. I had to have him somewhere, and I just really feel that Casualties was the most worthy entry in this. Again, controversial maybe, but I do feel this is one of his strongest works. If eventually I get round to doing a Devin Townsend ranking, further spoilers, this will probably be in the top 3 as well. 2015, you did me dirty. You did me dirty because you made me choose between 2 of my favourite albums of all time, and I'm very cross with you for this. So unfortunately for Steven Wilson, Hand Cannot Erase has just ever so slightly missed out in favour of Act 4, Rebirth in Reprise by the Deer Hunter. Because if I had to ask myself, like, hand on heart, if I could only pick between these two, if I could only take one of these with me and listen to that one and never hear the other one, I ultimately felt that if I didn't have Act 4, I would feel less fulfilled. Now, that's not to besmirch Hand Cannot Erase at all. Fantastic record, absolutely equal, one of the greatest of all time, yada, 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 etc., etc. But again, this was a record that opened doors for me. This is one that made me realise that kind of indie prog rock, that sort of indie rock thing blended with progressive rock, was absolutely amazing. And I love the theatricality of this. I love how bombastic it is, a real sense of vaudeville cinema. So good, so engaging, so enjoyable. Easily my favourite Deer Hunter album of all time, only marginally better than Act 5, admittedly, but, you know, I could only really have one Deer Hunter album on this list, so Act 4 it was. 2016, we're going with Thank You Scientist and Stranger Heads Prevail. Yeah, absolutely love Thank You Scientist. That level of jazzy intrigue that they bring to their music, the kind of complexity, the playfulness, the cheekiness of it all, absolutely just 100% my jam. Really love this album. I was obviously having to choose between this and their debut in terms of which one do I want to include on this list, so obviously things had to be moved aside and rearranged and all that usual nonsense. But I had to have this. I had to have a Thank You Scientist album on this list. Now, I was tempted to include their third record, but for me, I just felt that Stranger Heads Prevail had a bigger impact when I first heard it, because this was the first of their albums that I ever listened to. So it kind of had that sucker punch effect, and I couldn't ignore it, you know. It was just like, yeah, I'm into it. It's amazing. Let's go. There we go. 2016, Stranger Heads Prevail. 2017 brings us with Mike Oldfield's return to Ommadawn. Who knew that bringing out a sequel to one of your 1970 whatever classics would be this good? This long since you released the original to then bring a sequel out and have it not only be just as good as the original, but in some cases argumentatively better. It's just unheard of. That just doesn't happen. But yet here we are, Mike Oldfield. At the moment, I suppose this is probably going to be his last album, unless he has something in the works and surprises us all fairly soon. There seems to be a lot of the old guard prog rockers kind of doing that lately. But if this is his final album, then I cannot think of a more fitting, more incredible, and more fully formed, fully fledged, unbelievable piece of work to close out on. Everything about this works, everything about this clicks, it manages to feel like a respectful homage to the past, as well as doing that crucial thing of looking to the future and not crutching on the things that made the original so great. And that is why Return to Ommadawn was such a massive success for me, and why it had to feature on this list. Right, we're going a little bit more obscure in 2018. We're going with Ostura's The Room. Now, for me, this is one of the best Aerion-style records that's been released in the late 2010s. In absence of anything genuinely spectacular from IN in recent years, I looked to other sources to find that kind of ensemble cast progressive metal rock opera, and Ostura more than brought the goods for this one. Multiple vocalists, huge instrumentals, absolutely no fear in just letting loose with the most over-the-top nonsense you've ever heard. It's so much riotous fun. You can tell that the band are just having the time of their lives with this one. They aren't holding back, nothing's too cheesy, nothing's too camp, nothing's too theatrical. They just throw everything in the kitchen sink at this album, and it benefits from it so much because they are just having a blast. And I think it's basically impossible to not smile like an idiot whilst listening to this album, because you can feel the joy coming through the speakers. And it is 100% one of the albums I just come back to time and time and time again. And I really hope, if you haven't heard this one yet, you do go and check it out after this video, because that's the one I want you to go and listen to. Above anything else on this list, please go and check out Ostura's The Room. Cult of Luna brings us in 2019 with A Dawn to Fear. Now, this was a tricky one for me, because quite frankly, Cult of Luna could have featured on literally any year where they released an album. So I was kind of having to think to myself, where do I bring them into this? And then I thought to myself, do you know what? 2019 had some amazing albums, but something about A Dawn to Fear was the one that struck me the hardest. This album is terrifying. I'm not going to try and mince my words about it. This is the one where, you know, that guy where he's like being blasted by the speakers and he's sort of gripping the arms of the chair and he's like, ah, being blasted back by walls of sound and what have you. That's basically A Dawn to Fear, except it's a lot scarier than that. This really is post-metal at its absolute finest. It's so big, it is so grand, it is so overwhelming that I can't help but fall in love with it every single time. This isn't an album you can sort of pick little parts out of and listen to it in little sort of piecemeal places and little nuggets, whatever. You have to experience it from start to finish, so it does make it maybe a little bit more impenetrable than some of the other options that could have been on this entry, but it is definitely the most impactful one that I listened to. Cult of Luna are one of the most consistent bands in the world, and A Dawn to Fear, for me, is their absolute magnum opus. 2020 swings around, and again, I was a little conflicted, because for me, 2020 wasn't a great year for music. It was good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't great. But we're going to go with Motorpsycho and the All Is One. Really like this one. This was, for me, the definitive Motorpsycho album. This is the one that made me feel like if you were to summarize their career in one record, if you were to only ever listen to one Motorpsycho album for the rest of your life, this one is the one that would summarize everything perfectly. It's incredibly long, it's incredibly strong, it's got every little bit of psychedelia, kind of weird progressive rock structures going on, everything kind of blending into this one massive conglomerate. I don't want to say mess, but I suppose mess is one of the words I could use to describe it. But it's a beautiful mess. It's a mess that makes sense. It's chaos. It's just complete discordant sound at times, but it works. They've managed to take this kind of scattershot approach at songwriting. You know, they've thrown everything against the wall and they've just thought, right, okay, that bit there, that looks good. That bit there, that also looks good. We're going to sort of bring those together, jumble it around a little bit and put it into an album. And I think it's that kind of demented savagery that you get from this, not in like a heavy metal kind of way, more in a sort of what is going on inside their brains kind of way, because there is something so raw and weird and primal about this album, and I admire the absolute heck out of it for that. It's not for everybody, it's a lot to take in, it's very, very long, but if you're looking for something that really doesn't give a crap about adhering to anybody's expectations or style or anything like that, then you've got to give Motorpsycho props. Even this deep into their career, they were capable of surprising people, just like me. Right, we are starting to move into the territory of things that I have covered on the channel now, but just because you were my #1 pick in a list doesn't necessarily mean you are now. People's tastes change, etc., etc. So 2021, we are going with Io Sono Un Cane and Era. Now, it was originally The World's Debut for Players and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die with Illusory Walls. That was my top spot for 2021. But as things have gone on, I've learned to appreciate this particular album a little bit more. Only a teensy bit, mind you, and I kind of wanted to choose this one because it's a slightly more esoteric choice. And again, I've spoken about this album fairly regularly on the channel. I can't get enough of it. It was my pick for the best album of the 2020s so far. I still stand by that because this is one of the most bold, fearless, utterly, relentlessly creative albums I've heard in my entire life. I can't prepare you for this. I could tell you as much as I possibly could do about what it sounds like, about the history of the album, about the way the lyrics were formed and the different languages used, but nothing I can tell you, nothing I can personally do will prepare you for what you're going to actually experience when you press play. So my best advice to you is take it as the fact that this is on this list. It's a great album. Just try it. It's long, yes, but I'm only asking you to listen to it once. And if you feel it's great, you want to keep coming back to it, you feel it building on you, you'll probably understand why I've got it as my favourite album of the 2020s so far. 2022, possibly a big upset at that time because we had some incredible albums like An Abstract Illusion's Woe and Parius's The Signal Heard Throughout Space, but the album that stole my heart and remains to this day my favourite album of the year was Will Wood's In Case I Make It. Now, this came to me at a very, very personal time where I was undergoing some particularly, how shall I put it, problematic personal failure, shall I say. Let's put it that way. It's a very diplomatic way of saying I f***ed up on something, you know. But that happens, you know, people do that. People make mistakes, which is fine. But this is the album that got me through those mistakes. I felt very seen. I felt very seen when I was listening to this record. And you do get that sometimes, where you have an album that's written from a very personal perspective from the artist, that talks about their experiences in gratuitous and very intimate detail. And despite the very obvious subject matter that it might be dealing with, you begin to realize, hang on a minute, that's just like me. And In Case I Make It was that album for me. The vulnerability on display here, the sheer fearless projection of their own emotional state into the album just absolutely struck so many chords with me. It still does, and it still remains the album that I will openly weep to, possibly the most out of any album I've ever listened to, just because of how personal it feels, how utterly unafraid Will Wood was of displaying his most inner feelings for everyone to just look at and potentially judge him on. I love this album for that. It's utterly heartbreaking, but it's also hilarious in places. It's got this crazy grooves, weird silliness to it, never losing sight of that kind of, what's the way I want to put it? Joviality, I suppose. But the sadness is always there. Behind it's just the tears of a clown, isn't it? Incredible album, absolutely love it. 2023, it's over there. There he is. Look, it's there, but we're going to display it here as well anyway. It's Himmelbacken Volume 2 by Moonsafari. This was the one I'd been waiting for so long for. It felt like it was 8,000 years before we were going to see a new Moonsafari album. You know, Himmelbacken Volume 1 had come out. Where the hell's Himmelbacken Volume 2? Years were going by. It took a very long time. But it was worth the bloody wait, wasn't it? Oh, I love this album. It took everything that I love about Moonsafari and kind of pushed it up a little bit, you know? It felt like it had so many of their reliable tropes from their early days, so many of the elements that made them so interesting on their sort of later days, as well as mapping where they were going from here. It felt like a roadmap as to where the band could potentially be in the next 5 years. If this is the path, the route they're taking, then consider me all on board. It's a little bit more metal in places, it's a little bit more dynamic in places. Something about Himmelbach and Volume 2 just feels like the most complete thing that the band have ever done. It's a long record, it's a bold record, it's just so much endearing fun. The band are clearly enjoying themselves quite a lot with doing this record, and who could blame them when the end result was as absolutely immaculate as this one was. A well-deserved winner of my Album of the Year 2023, and it absolutely has to stay in place for this video. And last but not least, that brings us to 2024, where, of course, my Album of the Year last year was Bellum 2 by Aquilus, and it remains, of course, at the top of the list for 2024. It's not been that long. I haven't changed my mind yet. 2024 was kind of like the year of black metal for me, where I really started re-engaging with the genre. I'd almost let it fall to the wayside a bit for the past few years, and this is the one that really brought my interest back to the genre, just because of how cinematic it felt, how just singularly just pow. I don't know, I'm struggling for words here, you know, I'm 13 plus minutes deep into this video, I'm freeballing this entire thing and I'm running out of words. I need a thesaurus or something to help me out here. Come on, let's go. This album rocks, okay? We'll just go with that. We'll keep it simple. We're going to keep it simple. This is the last entry on the list, so we're going to keep it real straightforward. Bellum 2 by Aquilus is an absolutely badass album. It's so friggin' good, okay? The riffs are huge, the atmosphere is incredible, the vocals are just terrifying, and everything about this just feels like everything I enjoy from black metal. If you struggle to get into the genre, I get it, but do try this one out. It's very cinematic, it feels almost like a film score crossed with black metal, so maybe that'll help you get into it, maybe it'll scare you off even more, I don't know. I love it, I think it's brilliant, and there we go. We did it. We managed to cover the entire list without a single word being penned down on a piece of paper and having to do more edits and cuts than I can possibly imagine because I keep fumbling over my words because such is often the way of things when you're freeballing things. So, obviously, that's my list. What about your list? What are you mortified that I missed off? What are you horrified that I didn't include? Please let me know by commenting down below. If you did make it this far into this admittedly bloody long video of me just doing nothing but talking at a camera, then kudos to you. Thank you very much indeed for keeping with me to the end. Hopefully you did find some albums to check out from this video. If you didn't, then I don't know, maybe just go check some, take a random one, you know. You never know what you might find you enjoy. If you do want to help financially support the channel, I will be leaving a link below where you can buy some merch. I've got some terrible t-shirt designs. They're kind of fun though, and every little helps towards making my life a little bit easier. But of course, guys, until next time, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.